and welcome to Diabetes Connections in the News. I'm Stacey Sims, and these are the top diabetes stories and headlines happening now. In the News is brought to you by Athletic Greens. AG1 has been part of millions of mornings since 2010. Our top story this week, learning more about Eli Lilly's plan to cut prices of its most commonly prescribed insulin. By now, you likely know their plan. Libre will be capped at $25 a vial effective May 1st. Humalog and Humulin will be dropped by 70%, but not until later this year. The announcement comes amid growing federal pressure to lower the cost. The Inflation Reduction Act capped insulin prices for Medicare at $35 a month, but did not have anything else in place for those with private insurance or those with no insurance. We've also talked to the folks from Civica RX who are still planning to manufacture and sell lower-cost insulin, and Mark Cubid's Cost Plus Pharmacy plus the state of California are planning their own lower-cost insulin. It's also important to note that Lilly would have had to pay Medicaid about $150 for each vial of insulin used in that program if they had not dramatically cut list prices for some of their older products. They were facing a Medicaid penalty for raising the price of their drugs faster than the rate of inflation. The FDA clears Abbott's Freestyle Libre 2 and 3 continuous glucose monitors for integration with automated insulin delivery systems. Abbott already has an agreement with Tandem, makers of the T-Slim pump with Control IQ technology, and with Insulet, makers of the Omnipod pump with Omnipod 5 technology. No timeline given for when the products will actually be integrated. It's worth noting that Libre 3 no longer requires users to manually scan their device. Data is sent to the mobile app automatically, and the device has been cleared for an extended wear time of 15 days for use by children as young as age 2 and for use during pregnancy for women with type 1, type 2, or gestational diabetes. Abbott says the modified sensors with a longer wear time will be available in the U.S. later this year. Medicare will cover continuous glucose monitors for a broader group of patients starting next month. The policy change includes broader language and came a little earlier than expected. It could double the market for CGM among this group. We had previously reported that CMS had suggested coverage for people with diabetes who take daily insulin or who have a history of problematic low blood sugar. But now the policy includes people with non-insulin treated diabetes and a history of problems with low blood sugar. Right now, just 25% of people with type 2 diabetes who use multiple daily injections use a CGM. Bigfoot Biomedical receives FDA clearance for their Android mobile app for Bigfoot Unity. This allows users to input and review recommendations. They can get a display of their current glucose range and receive real-time alerts. Last month, Bigfoot sold its closed-loop automated insulin delivery system technology to Insulet. Bigfoot says they are focusing on ease of use, especially for people who might not be tech-savvy. They're currently in discussions with Express Scripts, Optum, and CVS. Bigfoot is wrapping insulin delivery around CGM to address the type 2 market, they say, in a new way. The use of diabetes technology has increased across all racial and ethnic groups, but inequities persist. Big article in the Journal of Endocrinology and Metabolism. From 2017 through 2020, overall use of an insulin pump, a CGM, both or either increased, but there were significant differences between racial and ethnic groups, with gaps in use between white individuals and individuals of other races and ethnicities. These researchers say, along with the demographic and socioeconomic factors, there are a lot of implications here, not only for patients and providers, but also for healthcare systems and policymakers. Interesting new study shows that verapamil, a blood pressure medication, but not better blood glucose control, improves beta cell function. This study, called CLVER, I don't know if that's supposed to be pronounced clever or clover, but it tested whether using an automated insulin delivery system or taking verapamil preserved the beta cell function 1 year after diagnosis. The AID users had more time in range, 78% compared to 64%. That's more than 3 hours a day. But the AID system did not provide a significant improvement in insulin secretion, which is what they were looking for here. This study was partially funded by JDRF. Cernova announces that the first 2 patients in a clinical trial have received their first islet transplant into the higher capacity 10-channel cell pouch. Cernova is one of a few companies going through clinical trials to see if islet cell transplantation while protecting those islet cells can cure type 1 diabetes while keeping the patient off immunosuppressive drugs. These patients will be monitored for safety and efficacy for 3 months, and then a second dose of islets is anticipated to be transplanted. A third enrolled patient has now received the cell pouch and is awaiting their islet transplant. Back to the news in just a moment, but first, In the News is brought to you by Athletic Greens. And AG1 is way more than greens. It's all your key health products like multivitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more working together as one. I don't do New Year's resolutions. You know that about me. But I started drinking AG1 in January of this year, and I feel like it's just making it really easy to get all of those vitamins and minerals that I want. It is daily nutrition made really simple. It's made with 75 super high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food-sourced ingredients that deliver benefits like mood, immune system, and sleep support, sustained energy, and much more. If you want to take ownership of your health, today is a good time to start. Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/Stacey. That's athleticgreens.com/STACEY. Check it out. Back to the news, and as the weather gets better and we start thinking about baseball, I wanted to call your attention, and I will link this up to a great article in the New York Times about Garrett Mitchell. I love this story because Garrett has lived with type 1 since he was a kid. He plays for the Milwaukee Brewers. In fact, I think some of the moms that I know in one of my Facebook moms group have watched him grow up playing baseball. But anyway, the reason I like this article is because the headline and the subheadline do not mention type 1 at all. The headline is "The fastest man in baseball says he can go even faster." And then you got to get well into the article. They certainly do talk about type 1. It's not one of these, despite type 1, he's a good ball player. Interestingly, they do talk about the 2020 draft that he was in during the time of COVID and the concern about teams being scared off, what he had to do to stay safe. But the article is really about his speed and his rookie time. It's not about type 1 only. Very good stuff, and I will link it up. On the podcast next week, Ginger Vieira is a well-known diabetes advocate, author, exercise with diabetes expert, and she also has been using Afrezza, and she shares a lot about all of those aspects of her life. I knew you'd have a lot of questions about Afrezza, so we talked about that quite a bit. That is next week's episode with Ginger. She's got a new book out called Ain't Gonna Hide My T1D, along with illustrator Mike Lawson. So that is next week. The last interview episode is with Amanda Troutman, whose daughter lives with type 1 and whose son has been treated with Tzield, what used to be called teplizumab before it was approved by the FDA. Basically, this means his diabetes diagnosis is delayed. He had his treatment last month and he is back at school, back at sports. No signs of type 1. Really interesting story. And we talk about the family's reaction, the costs, insurance, the process, all of that. And that is in the news for this week. If you like it, please do share it. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.